In the valleys of ancient Israel, tension rippled through the air. The mighty Philistine army had gathered, boasting their strength and power, ready to crush the Israelites. Their forces lined the hills on one side, while the Israelite army, led by King Saul, stood trembling on the opposite side. For 40 days, both armies had been locked in a standoff, neither willing to make the first move. At the center of the Philistine ranks stood Goliath, a giant of a man, over 9 feet tall, clad in gleaming bronze armor, a massive spear in hand. His voice, loud and booming, filled the valley every morning and evening as he taunted the Israelites. "Choose a man to fight me," Goliath roared each day. "If he kills me, we will be your servants. But if I kill him, you will serve us." His challenge was met with silence and fear. No one in Israel dared face him. Even Saul, the tallest and most powerful of the Israelites, felt his heart tremble at the sight of the giant. But far from the battlefield, in the quiet hills of Bethlehem, a young shepherd named David was tending to his father's flock. He was the youngest son of Jesse, overlooked by most for his age and small stature. Though small in size, David had a heart full of faith and courage, nurtured by his time in the fields, where he had learned to protect his sheep from lions and bears with nothing but a sling and stones. One morning, Jesse called David from the fields. "Take these provisions to your brothers who are with Saul's army," Jesse instructed. David, eager to see the battlefield, gathered the supplies and made his way to the camp. When he arrived, he found the Israelites in disarray, speaking in hushed voices about the terror that was Goliath. As David greeted his brothers, Goliath's challenge echoed once more across the valley. David's eyes narrowed as he saw the fear on the faces of the soldiers. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" he asked, his voice filled with conviction. His eldest brother Eliab scowled at him. "Why have you come down here? Who did you leave those few sheep with in the wilderness? You're just a boy, David. Go back to tending sheep." But David ignored the rebuke. His heart burned with righteous anger. He knew the true battle was not between Goliath and Israel, but between the Philistine and the God of Israel. Word soon reached King Saul that a young man was asking to face Goliath, and Saul called David to him. When David stood before the king, Saul was taken aback. The boy was small, barely more than a youth. "You cannot go against this Philistine," Saul said, shaking his head. "You are just a boy, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David's eyes were steady, his voice unwavering. "Your servant has killed lions and bears while protecting my father's sheep. The Lord who rescued me from their paws will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul, seeing the fire in David's heart, reluctantly agreed. He tried to arm David with his own royal armor, but it was too heavy and cumbersome. David cast it aside, choosing instead the weapons he knew best, a simple sling and 5 smooth stones he picked from a stream. Armed with nothing but his faith and his sling, David approached the battlefield. Goliath watched as the young shepherd boy walked toward him, carrying no sword, no spear, only a sling. He let out a thunderous laugh. "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" he mocked, raising his spear. "Come here, and I will feed your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." But David stood firm, his heart steady in the Lord. "You come against me with sword and spear," David called out, his voice ringing clear across the valley. "But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Without hesitation, David placed a stone in his sling, whirled it above his head, and released it with precision. The stone flew through the air and struck Goliath squarely in the forehead. The giant stumbled, his eyes wide with shock. In an instant, he collapsed to the ground, his enormous body crashing down with a thud that echoed across the valley. A stunned silence fell over the battlefield. The Israelites, who had been paralyzed by fear, now erupted in cheers. David rushed forward, taking Goliath's own sword to cut off his head, sealing his victory. The Philistines, seeing their champion fall, turned and fled in terror. David stood over the fallen giant, not as a boy, but as a champion of faith, chosen by God. The Israelites surged forward in triumph, chasing the Philistines from the battlefield. That day, the Lord delivered Israel, not through the strength of armies or the power of kings, but through the faith of a young shepherd boy. David's victory over Goliath marked the beginning of his rise to greatness. He would become a hero in Israel, loved by the people and anointed by God to be the future king. But it was his unwavering trust in God, in the face of overwhelming odds, that made him a true man of faith, a symbol of courage for generations to come.